All right, but before we get started talking about 1.6, I'd like you to do a little warm-up question here. So go ahead and pause the video and try to solve the Batman angle problem. So first off, looking at angle BAT. Because this angle is a right angle, then the two angles that are combining to create that angle, which is y and 15 and 39 minus x, must equal 90 degrees. So we simplify that equation and get y minus x equals 36. The next angle is something that we can assume, but it's also telling us that angle MAN, which is those two angles together, form a straight angle, and any angle that adds up to a straight angle must add up to 180 degrees. So when I simplify this one, I get x into 2y equals 165, and then this becomes a system of equations. And actually, a nice one for us to solve because the x's cancel right away. And we get 3y equals 201. Finish solving this, and we get y is 67. Plug it back into one of our other equations, and we get x is 31. Then we got to go back and answer the geometry question of what is angle BAM. And angle BAM is x and y added together. So that would tell us that angle BAM 98 degrees. So notice how the beginning part of setting up the equation and setting up the equation is the geometry part of reading the diagram. And the middle part of actually solving is the algebra part, that is a review from your previous classes, and then again going back in and solving the geometry portion. Today we're going to talk about different pairs of angles, looking at complementary, supplementary, vertical angles, linear pairs, etc. So first things first, when we're looking at complementary angles, we are looking at two angles that add to 90 degrees. Adjacent complementary angles also form a right angle. And then when we are looking at supplementary angles, we are two angles that add to 180 degrees. And adjacent supplementary angles would form a straight angle. And so I've used that word adjacent. Adjacent angles are angles that are next to each other. So they are angles that are side by side, and they share a side then. So adjacent angles would be like that angle is adjacent to that angle because this middle side here is the shared ray or side of each of the angles. We've talked about complementary and supplementary angles. Using with adjacent or non-adjacent, they can still be supplementary or complementary. So I could have an angle that is 40 degrees and an angle that is 140 degrees. These are non-adjacent supplementary angles. But I could also make adjacent supplementary angles. Which are angles on a straight line. And I could do the same thing with complementary. A linear pair of angles is formed when two lines intersect. Two angles are said to be linear if they are adjacent angles formed by two intersecting lines. So this is another way to get a straight angle of 180 degrees. And when we have two angles that form that straight line, we call them a pair of angles that form a line, so a linear pair. Vertical angles are angles that when you have two lines that are intersecting, the angles that are opposite of each other. So in this case, angle 1 and angle 2 are vertical. And then if I were to say angle 3 and angle 4, they would also be vertical. And vertical angles are congruent to each other. So let's look at some examples. First example here, the measure of angles 1, 2, and 3 are in a ratio of 1, 3, and 2. So because we're using a ratio, we need to put in our scale factor here. We'll usually just use x. So for the first one, we will call it, with its 1, we'll call it 1x. Second one is a ratio of 3, so 3x. Then last one is 2, so we'll call it 2x. And then because all three angles form a straight line, then we add up all of our angles and we get 6x is equal to 180. So x is equal to 30. And then the directions say find the measure of each angle. So I'm going to plug 30 back into the problem here. And I'm going to get angle 1 is equal to 30 degrees. Angle 2 is equal to 90 degrees. And angle 3 is equal to 60 degrees. Number 2 is already done for us. So as far as setup, those two angles again form a straight angle. So 6x equals 180. X equals 30. And because it wants me to find the measure of XVS in the diagram, XVS is 2x. So XVS equals 60 degrees. Number 3 says these two angles are complementary to each other. So first off, because they are complementary to each other, I know that they have to add to 90 degrees. It then also talks about having a ratio of 5 to 3. So 5x and 3x. And then when I add them up, I get 8x is equal to 90 degrees. Solve that, I get x is 11.25. And then finding the measure of COA is 3x. So 3 times 11.25 is 33.75. Go ahead and try to pause the video and see if you can solve numbers 4, 5, and 6 on your own. Number 4, again, talks about ratio, so I'm going to label them as 2x, 5x, and 3x. So that is going to give me 10x equals 180, x equals 18, and then when I plug it in, I can find angles 4, 5, and 6, and I'm going to get 36 degrees, 90 degrees, and 54 degrees. Solving for y in terms of x just means that you're going to get y equals something, but x can be a part of your answer. So the thing that we do know about this particular problem is because those two angles are vertical angles, I can set those two angles equal to each other. And then it says solve for y, so I'm just going to get y by itself. And so when I move the x and the 10 to the other side, I'm going to get y equals... sorry, I'm going to not move x and 10 to the other side. I'm going to move 3x to the other side. So I'm going to get y equals negative 2x plus 10. And that's all you do because it says solve for y. For number 6, we want to find angle 1, but in order to find angle 1, I need to first find x. And in order to find x in this case, I need to use my vertical angles. So my angles that are across from each other are equal to each other. And I'm going to have a quadratic here. So get everything to one side and set it equal to 0. So we are going to need to remember how to factor these questions here. So to get rid of the half, I am going to multiply everything by 2. And then I need to remember how to factor this. So you can do it by guess and check or split the middle term, whatever works for you. And then when you do that, you're going to get 2x minus 21 and x plus 4, which means you're going to have two answers. X is equal to 21 over 2 and negative 4. So then you have to plug in your different values for x here. So you need to now that we have two x values, we need to check both x values into the problem. So our first one of 10.5, when you plug in 10.5 squared into, let's use it into x squared minus 6. So 21 over 2 squared minus 6 times 21 over 2. And we are going to get 47.25, but that's this angle here. And I want to find angle 1, which is its supplement. So angle 1 is going to equal 132.75 degrees. But now I still need to check my second answer for x, which is negative 4. So I'm going to plug in negative 4. And when I go back in and plug in negative 4 squared minus 6 times negative 4, I'm going to get 40 degrees. And when I do that, and again, you can plug it into this one or this one, doesn't matter. But when you plug that in, I get 40 degrees, which means its supplement for angle 1 is 140 degrees. And so you have two, what we call possible answers. Your diagram told you that the vertical angles were congruent. It gave you two possible x answers. And then we have to plug it in and find out that we have two possible answers for angle 1.